Okay. Hi, kids out there. Thank you for coming. Good morning is right. Gentlemen, let's talk. We have François Poirier, TC Energy CEO, my dear friend Andrew Wheeler, former EPA. And let's kick a few things around. François, let me start with you. A semantic issue becomes a policy issue. I hear a lot about the word transition, resilience, but I also prefer the word growth. And it seems to me, as we look ahead the next 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, between the development of new technologies, particularly AI, anything to do with quantum computing, but also development around the world, fighting poverty in Africa and elsewhere. I would say we need more energy, not less, but that's just me. You're in the business and you're running a very big company. What say you?
I say it's really about energy addition, not energy transition.
Right.
We need more of everything. Energy demand is growing in the Western world. Energy demand is growing in the developing world. And we need more, and we need to balance affordability, reliability, and sustainability. And the way to do that.
Affordability, reliability. Okay, I got it. No, yep. It was fast. I just wanted to get it. I got it.
Got it. And so our responsibility is to make more of every form of energy available as sustainably as possible.
You know, Andrew Wheeler, it's interesting. There used to be a view, which I dare say was a bipartisan view with respect to energy. It was called all of the above.
That's right.
All right. Republicans were for it. Most Democrats, I was going to say most Republicans and most Democrats. I know I'm generalizing, but that was basically, and that goes all the way back, many decades. More recently, the view has changed, and it's the fossil fuels versus renewables, which I think does a great disservice to the outcomes in the country, but just also to the politics of it. Now, when you were in the EPA, when you were running the EPA, what was, in your judgment, the largest, biggest challenge to get done what you wanted to get done, which I think is consistent with what François just said. We need additions, not subtractions. And I think you would call yourself an all-of-the-above guy. You're not opposed to wind and solar, but you don't want to knock, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but see where I'm going. I'd like to find a consensus again, if such a thing is possible. I don't know that it is.
I think the important thing, what I strive to do, is to make sure that we had a level playing field for all energy sources,
right,
including permitting. You know, a lot of the permitting reform that you see today from the Democrats is geared just to renewables. We need permitting reform for all forms of energy, and you need it for the extraction industry, for the critical minerals, if you want to have renewables. And a lot of the proposals you see only look at installing wind and solar and maybe transmission lines, but they don't get to the needs that we have across the board.
Just to follow up on that, the permitting issue is dear to my heart. A lot of the permits in the Trump administration came through the NEC. But again, oddly enough, when we looked at that, these permits could be used for fossil-related fuels, okay. They could be used for nuclear. They could be used for wind. They could be used for solar. And we wrote them in such a way, we had one federal decision, and we tried to put a 2-year time limit on it and stuff like that. That was repealed in the current administration, but it's actually, as I understand it, the repeal of the permitting reforms has slowed all infrastructure for energy, whether it's renewables or whether it's fossils. Is that fair, unfair?
No, that's absolutely fair. It really has. It's slowed across the board. You know, I spent the last 2.5 years with Governor Youngkin in Virginia,
right,
and we did a permitting transparency initiative where we put all pending permits online on a Gantt chart so you can track it. And we found, just with doing the transparency, we reduced permitting time by over 40%. So, you know, there's some easy things you can do to improve permitting. but you have to take a look at, you have to apply it to everything. You can't just have
That's-
permitting reform for one type
I
of
mean,
thing.
it actually affected infrastructure of all. I mean, they passed a big infrastructure bill. I think it was in the summer or fall of 2021. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 21, the most recent infrastructure bill. Okay. One hears all kinds of stories. I'm getting off the energy beat for just one little second. One hears all kinds of stories and then reads reports that much of that infrastructure bill was incomplete, undone, because the permitting rules were gone. I mean, whatever it is you're trying to build a highway, okay? And I don't want to be trite, but you're trying to build a bicycle path. It's all in that bill. I mean, Trump had a bill also, it wasn't passed, but these things are somewhat similar. But without permitting reforms, they couldn't even get it done.
Well, look, Larry, uncertainty is the enemy of investment.
Okay, good,
Okay.
good.
And we are capital allocators in the private sector, and much like water that flows to the lowest point, capital flows at the path of least resistance. And when you're looking to allocate capital and the timelines are uncertain, the rules are uncertain, you're simply going to allocate your capital elsewhere. And so while the financial incentives are helpful, it costs tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to develop a project to bring it up for permitting. So before you even start going down that road, you assess the permitting process for viability. And if it's not there, you're going to go elsewhere.
So speaking of going elsewhere, the XL pipeline, gone with the wind, and you and I talked on the TV show last night, and you ain't coming back. I mean, you're a nice fella, you're here in the States, but you're not coming back for the pipeline.
We're not for that pipeline, but I would tell you, Larry, that I suppose the silver lining in it is that we had to rip out $1 billion of steel pipe, and we repurposed it for natural gas use. So we've expanded our systems down to Louisiana and the Gulf Coast, and we're helping export more natural gas to world markets to help create energy security for the world.
Andrew, why isn't natural gas regarded as one of the absolute key solutions to the climate and to reducing emissions? Why isn't that?
It needs to be, but the environmental extremists don't want any fossil fuels at all. So they don't want oil, coal, or natural gas. But it really is. The natural gas industry for years has said it's a bridge fuel, but we're going to need natural gas for at least the next 30, 40 years, if not longer than that. And natural gas usage is going up. But we also have, however, we're dealing with regulations from the Biden-Harris administration that are going to hamper the new natural gas units in this country because they're requiring carbon capture and sequestration for natural gas. And you can't do that everywhere. You have to have the right geological formations for storing the carbon, and it's extremely expensive, and it's unproven at this point. There's no full-scale, utility-scale CCS in the United States. The only way you use it right now, and they're doing it in Canada, is for enhanced oil recovery. So, unless you want to use the captured carbon to drill for more oil, which kind of goes against the purpose of what they're trying to do, you really have to change those regulations because we're going to need natural gas.
Why is it, Francois, I mean, either of you could answer that. Why is it that the greenies in the EU have, in fact, reclassified natural gas as a clean burning fuel, officially?
Yes.
Okay, which I think is terrific. But the greenies in the US won't do that. And it seems to me, I'm going to get to the LNG problems in a minute, but it seems to me right there, since so much depends on classification and definitions, that's a big problem.
It is a problem. We move a third of the natural gas around North America. We're in 38 states in the United States. So I've got lots of data to tell you that when the penetration of renewables increases in a state, natural gas demand for power generation also increases because you need to be able to firm up that intermittent source of electricity. So natural gas is actually an enabler of increasing wind and solar generation in any market.
Expand that just a little bit more.
Well, because
natural gas is an enabler for the other renewables.
Absolutely. You know, I talk to customers all the time. Someone wants to spend hundreds of millions of dollars putting a plant in place in a certain market. They need affordable and reliable power as well as sustainable. If you can only run your operations when the wind is blowing or the sun is shining, that's a problem. So you need that reliability, and you know, natural gas provides reliability to wind and solar generation, and that combination is very powerful, and that's the way in which natural gas enables renewables.
Andrew, were there efforts, I'll just say down through the years, to reclassify natural gas as a clean burning renewable?
There have been efforts to do that, but
Congressional efforts or regulatory
certainly
efforts?
people in Congress have pushed that. States have pushed that, but it just hasn't happened here in the United States. The green lobby is just opposed to any type of fossil fuel, and they're kind of burying their heads in the sand on that because we absolutely need it, and we need it for the reliability, and it's important. It's base load generation.
So if you look at long-term charts, let's say covering the last 20 some odd years, maybe 25 years, I don't recall. United States carbon emissions come down quite a bit.
Yes.
I believe we're the lowest in the OECD or near the bottom. China and Russia and India emissions have gone way up. I would argue, and you talked about this on our show last night, that has a lot to do with the enhanced production of natural gas. Yes. I would add a piece to nuclear, and I'm going to get to nuclear in a minute, but coal production is down. Oil production is, last 4 or 5 years, is flat, 13 million barrels a day. It had risen before then. But the explosion of natural gas is responsible for the reduction in carbon emissions. Now, I think that, I don't know, it doesn't get any simpler than that. That's just a simple data point. I don't know why don't more people realize that? Why aren't they friendlier to natural gas?
They should be, and you're right. Coal is less than half of what it was 15 years ago. You know, when I was EPA administrator, I got to attend on behalf of the United States 3 of the G7 environmental ministers meetings, and in all the meetings, at least one of the ministers would say something about the fact that we pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, and I always pointed out that we were reducing our CO2 more than the other 7
yes.
G7 countries.
That's a factoid.
It is, absolutely. They're down in the United States.
I mean, coal's the stepchild. Maybe coal can be rescued. I don't know. The only people that really came to me about coal when I was working in the White House were the coal owners, the donors. They came to me, and I just shrugged my shoulders. I said, I really can't help you. We did try to have a level playing field on subsidies, which I think is a point I want to get to later. But you were going to chime in about this?
I was.
Feel free.
From 2000 onward, coal consumption around the world has increased by 66%.
Yeah.
But today, the Asia-Pacific region makes up 83% of coal consumption.
Right, that's China.
Right. So while North America has reduced its coal consumption by 50% during that period of time, it's grown dramatically in the Asia-Pacific region. So if you take the learning of the U.S.'s experience domestically, shifting from coal to natural gas to deliver significant emission reductions, there is an opportunity. The United States is an energy superpower. The United States is awash with natural gas. We can help solve the world's emission problems by delivering more natural gas to other regions.
So how is it possible, I mean, just as a matter of common sense, to impose an LNG export moratorium, Andrew? How is that possible? Or what's the thinking?
We have to have LNG exports. It's energy.
There's a moratorium on it right now.
Right, there is. We have to have it for energy diplomacy.
Energy security,
yes,
national security. Yes, sir.
You know, I worked for, when I worked in the Senate, I worked for former Senator Jim Inhofe, who recently passed away.
Yes.
And back in the late 80s, he and former Secretary of Energy Don Hodel went back, looked over the last 100 years, and almost every armed conflict over the last 100 years, the country with the greater supply of energy was victorious in the battle, regardless of where it was in the world. Energy is key to not only our own national security, but to energy diplomacy, and we need it.
And this is, Larry, where we come back to permitting reform being so important. We operate one of the largest grids in North America. Our pipelines are all full. I know all of my peer companies' pipelines are all full. We are at the point now where it's time to start building new greenfield, large diameter lines to the coastlines of North America for LNG export. And back to the prior point around uncertainty being the enemy of investment. Permitting reform is necessary to enable global security because the U.S. is an energy superpower.
Yes.
I mean, I think right now, when you look at the conflicts which have developed, let's start with Europe, with Russia, Ukraine. The United States could be helping Europe wean itself off of Russian energy dependence, whether it's oil, but particularly natural gas. And it seems like, as I said earlier, the EU has moved back towards natural gas. There's a renaissance on that subject. We had tough times during our administration. Sometimes they were friendly and sometimes they weren't. But now they've moved back. So look at the instead of depending on Russia, which chooses to seek war and seek expansion and break the normal rules of sovereignty and so forth, we have a moratorium. I don't understand. And at home, if you're building new LNG plants, pipelines, delivery mechanisms, transportation, everything that you guys know about better than I do, isn't that a job creator?
Very much so.
Or did I miss something?
Well, in any market you look at, the introduction of affordable, reliable energy, in this case, natural gas, increases GDP per capita. There's a very strong correlation over many decades.
So if I think about this, if I want to build a wind farm, right? I kind of think wind farm, got the lingo. Sure. Okay, now I want to build a wind farm. I am told that I read that it takes up a lot of acreage and you have to do a certain amount of drilling and excavation to put it into place. So you need power, you need electricity. So you could, maybe this is what you were getting at earlier and I missed it. It's so terribly early in the morning for me. But if you're building this wind farm, you'd need electricity.
Yes.
Right, so that could be natural gas. Yes. This is what you're saying. Natural gas can help build wind farms. Is that what you're getting at? I'm a slow learner, but I just want to get this right.
It's a great point. Natural gas can help build wind farms.
Right.
Natural gas can help mine critical minerals.
Reduce
our dependency on China for critical minerals.
For batteries.
For batteries.
For electric vehicles.
Absolutely.
I know no one wants to drive them, but whatever, we could put it together,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to get that straight. It just occurred to me, the light went on. So Andrew, why, you talked about earlier the level playing field, which is very interesting. And I think you were implying subsidies.
Well, not just subsidies, but regulations, permitting. A lot of the permitting reform legislation, particularly by the Democrats in Congress, are only for renewable projects.
Yes.
You have to level the playing field across the board.
But let's
the
talk
federal government should not be picking winners and losers in energy.
All right, so
it's more at the state level and the state PUCs, and because our regions differ so much and states differ so much on what their needs are. You can have the wind farms, you can have the solar farms in different parts of the country, but if you don't have the adequate battery storage, you need something for the reliability on the baseload generation.
Well, this was always a problem, which in some sense all roads lead to China, not Rome. And that's a big problem. It's a political problem, but it becomes a security problem. But I just wanted to ask you, on the subsidy, I mean, we are spending a fortune to subsidize renewables.
We are.
And it's completely unbalanced with respect to natural gas, oil, coal, and nuclear. I want to get to nuclear in a few moments. But just, I mean, the misnamed Inflation Reduction Act, which President Biden finally said was misnamed, is being priced out at roughly $1 trillion. But it's all for renewables, Green New Deal, whatever words you want to use, electric vehicles. That's a lot of money, obligated but unspent money, I might add, which may be subject to rescissions if there's a new administration. And in general, it just seems unfair politically.
I agree, and but I think whoever wins this fall is going to have to take a look at the money because of the Trump tax credits that are up next year. Even a Harris administration can't get rid of all of them, or you'd have a massive tax increase for all Americans. So they're going to be looking for money somewhere. So I do think that the unspent, obligated money is certainly going to be on the table, but they haven't done a very good job of spending it. You just look at the EV charging stations, where is it either $7.5 or $8.5 billion, and they've only built 8. And that's
Have they built
because of
8?
the
I thought they were still working on 8.
well, 8 have at least started.
Where are they? I wonder.
Several are in Ohio. I'm not sure the other locations, but
None of them are on the Merritt Parkway here.
no,
Or the,
no.
or the Hutch, yeah, okay.
So
Please, Francois.
To add a point to that, subsidies were not the reason why natural gas displaced oil,
Right.
and oil displaced coal as the primary form of energy.
Got it. Yep.
Yes.
Cost competitiveness
Yes.
is what did it.
Yes.
So the market signals and the competition among sources of energy should be determining what's most affordable, reliable, and sustainable.
In short, it was cheaper,
Yes.
a lot cheaper.
Yes.
And hence, the producers would have a higher rate of return on that investment.
Yes.
But
Right.
a lot of that, though, was also the new regulatory burdens put on the coal sector during the Obama administration. If you remember when he ran for president, he said, I'm not going to outlaw coal, but I'm just going to make it so expensive that it'll bankrupt you
Right.
if you
Well, he
don't
had
do
those. He had those coal mines up in Illinois. He had to be
Yes.
careful of that as a U.S. senator. But let's not talk politics. This is purely analytics. Francois, I want to build some nuclear plants, nuclear modules, a subject I just barely know much about, but I know it's happening out there. People in the industry talk to me about it, and I think it's. Again, the current administration doesn't like the nuclear story, but I think it's a promising avenue to, your word was, what was it? You want to add
Energy addition, yes.
Energy addition, right.
Well, we own and operate the largest nuclear plant in the world.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Happens to be in Canada.
Oh.
Canada has had very strong policy support and a very credible regulator for many, many decades. And so we've enjoyed using nuclear as a baseload fuel for power generation, which has zero emissions, right? So it's not surprising to me to see a renaissance of nuclear. We recently saw Microsoft
Don't you love this? They're investing in 3 Mile Island.
3 Mile Island, yes.
I love this. Look,
Yes.
those software, they're very smart, the Microsofties,
Yes.
so I'm not surprised. And they're going to say, basically, if you won't give us enough power and electricity, we're going to get our own.
And those conversations, Larry, are happening all over the United States. There are only so many nuclear plants that can be refurbished and repowered, so already AI and data center developers are looking to natural gas to supply.
They need it,
their
right?
energy.
AI,
They
all
very much
fast
do.
computing related stuff, they
Absolutely.
need electricity.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating. So what happens to nuclear? How to help nuclear? Do you need separate permitting for nuclear if you were still running EPA, Andrew Wheeler?
Well, a lot of that's through the NRC, but you need the certainty.
Okay.
People are hesitant to invest in the SMRs here in the United States or a new reactor because they don't know how long the permitting will take. You know, if you're told it's going to take 8 years and you do the financing for 8 years, as you know, if it runs into 9, 10, 11 years,
Yes.
the project is not feasible. So you have to have that certainty on the permitting side, and I'm bullish on nuclear. I think that is
I hear it from
long-term
everybody in business talking about nuclear, and so many people in the energy business are talking about nuclear. I don't hear it yet in the government. I don't hear it in Washington. I'm just hearing it outside.
You hear it from the states. Several of the states are really looking at
Like whom? Such as?
like Virginia, like Wyoming. There's and West Virginia even.
West
they're looking at
Virginia.
nuclear.
Boy, that's fascinating. You know, the last point, we've just got a few moments left. This business about subsidies, which is driving me crazy. As an old budget guy and an economic advisor and a tax cutter, in my opinion, we need to make room for lower tax rates, let people keep their own money and improve our competitiveness. But what I'm saying is, you know the old phrase, money can't buy you love. Remember, it's an old phrase. I'm a child of the 50s, and money can't buy you love. I forget who first sang that. But my friend Steve Koonin, who was a brilliant physicist, who was the chief energy department scientist during the Obama years. Steve writes periodically on the subject, and I'm going to pull out a stat for him. Despite global renewable energy investment of almost $12 trillion in the 9 years ending in 2023, 12 trillion in the 9 years ending 2023 on renewables. Fossil fuels continue to provide about 80% of the world's energy. I want to finish on this point. Money doesn't buy you love. Money doesn't buy you renewables. The market is more powerful than the subsidies. And Andrew, I think private investment is more powerful than than government investment.
I agree. But most of that increase, of course, is in Asia, Africa, China and India in particular. But we're going to need new natural gas in the United States.
So let's open the spigots to it.
Yes.
But really what you want to do is open the spigots to, investors, okay? Like TC Energy, for example. I'm going to make it easier for you to do this, not harder.
Yes.
And I'll make it easier for you or whatever companies to help out the low-income countries of Africa, for example, which I think is an important mission.
The reserves are there. The demand is there, and the markets are there that want the natural gas. What's in between is the transportation service. If permitting clogs investment, you're preventing natural gas from getting to where it wants to go.
Yeah, you're really cutting off your nose to spite your face. Doesn't make any sense at all. I want to say many, many thanks. François Poirier, the CEO of TC Energy, and I'm Andrew Wheeler, former EPA administrator. I'm Larry Kudlow. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.